Hi Mom, welcome to our first video. Yes, this is me and Jesse with the big camera.
This is exciting.
This is very exciting. Don't mistake our docile tone for how excited we are, because this is actually very, very exciting.
I just ate too much fish for lunch, so I'm a little sleepy.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll get through it. So, welcome to our first video. The first week, the first recap. We're going to be doing basically once a week updates coming out on Tuesday of the following week. That way you get more of an idea of what we have going on in the shop. In the shop, Jesse's here all the time. I'm out here some of the time. You can kind of see him back there. Dave's in there all the time as well. But what we're focusing on right now is we have a project. And I'm going to try and focus one-handed. Oh, super blown out, but yeah, there it is. Yep. That's our Megacab that we just recently reacquired back. You probably saw the intro video. I keep looking at the screen. We're newbies at this. We're going to get this right. But me and Jesse are going to start working on this thing. But first, we got to get this out of the way. Everybody loves a Bronco. This is one of the ones we have. It's getting glass. It's going to be a good one. So let's get this one out of here and get the Megacab in. We're inside now. Truck's there. If you didn't know, it's large and in charge. If you didn't see the intro video, it's an 0759 Megacab. It's lifted fairly tall. Actually, fairly tall for us, not as far as trucks go, but it's on 42s. It's got glass front and back, built engine, Hamilton cam, compounds, all that kind of good stuff. We acquired it maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And we're gonna go through it. In fact, Jesse's got a list.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get this list up on the whiteboard. That way we know what we need to get checked off, because we're halfway organized. We're gonna try and be organized. We're gonna be adults.
Yeah.
And adults make lists to the whiteboard. So we went to go write it on the whiteboard and didn't realize that we can't even get to our whiteboard. Cardboard it is. We found cardboard. We found a marker.
So it turns out our whiteboard is unreachable and all the markers are dead, but Sharpies live forever. So we got our piece of cardboard here. We're gonna make our list on there. First thing on the list is this front axle is an unknown, because I started working here after this truck was already gone, and everybody that was working here when this truck was still here forgets what the front axle was. It was swapped out of another truck, or it's had been broken and fixed. And moral of the story is it has a fitting in the top of it for an air locker, and there's an air locker solenoid on the frame, and there's nothing hooked to any of it. So we're wondering, does it have a front locker in it? What gears are in it? Is everything right? Is anything broken? So first thing, locker.
Interesting fact, I didn't know Jesse was left-handed.
Shocking.
Shocking. Next, ball joints.
Yeah, so it's got Dynatrack ball joints in it, which are super cool, and the coolest part about them is that they are rebuildable. Now, we don't think these ones have probably ever been rebuilt, and with the amount of miles that it has, and it's been sitting, and it's apparently been to the mud bogs once or twice in a previous life, so we need to give them a thorough check, see if there's any slop, and probably go ahead and rebuild them anyways, because we can.
So we're going to. Plus, this thing's had 42s on it since I've ever known of it, so chances are the ball joints are probably not super stoked on life. And we've got new brake lines and check brakes.
Brakes are old, it's an old truck, probably the original rotors. Kind of go through everything, figure out if any of the calipers are sticky, new pads, new rotors. All the coating on the extended brake lines has come off of they've got that vinyl coating on the stainless steel hose, and so probably end up changing them just so they look better. And yeah.
And after that, we need to, this thing has wheel spacers on it. So we need to check the back spacing on there, because we don't want our wheel spacers anymore. And we've got a new set of wheels that we want to put on it.
Yes.
But we need to make sure that everything is going to fit as it's supposed to.
Yes. which actually, off camera, we pulled one wheel and test fit another wheel, determined the backspace that we wanted, and ended up with this set of 20 by 10, I think, wheels.
I think so. Either way, we already did that, but we're going to show you how we did it
Yeah.
once we get the wheels off and show you how to measure and all that kind of good stuff. So throw that up on there. The nice thing is I think we can actually put a check mark next to that one. It's already down. Wheels check. You'll see that, don't
Look,
worry.
we're already killing it.
We're doing a great job here. Next thing, we got to build inner fender liners for it.
Yes.
It's kind of hard for you guys to tell, but I'll get some footage of that. The inner fender liners are non-existent, which means road grime, anything that you drive over is getting splashed right up into the engine bay.
Yeah,
And the door jambs.
And into the door jambs, which has killed both sets of front door hinges. So we're also going to have to do that. It
Yeah.
needs hinges.
So inner fender liners, and then you can throw door hinges right under that. Next thing, we need to buff out the headlights.
Yeah, the whole truck, really. I
Yeah.
mean, this thing has sat outside and had many paint, I wouldn't say fixes, but, you know, the grill, the hood, the fenders, the bed sides, everything are not original to this truck. So everything's slightly different shaded white right now.
I'd say we just write on there buff. We got to replace the hood struts. Did we do that already?
Yeah, I already did that because, well, it wouldn't stay up, and
Yeah.
I was tired of shoving a board up in the hood to hold it open.
So you can throw hood struts
I'm
on
not
there.
even gonna write it. Next one.
Check marks is fun. Next, replace batteries. We already did that. Did we?
Actually, no.
okay,
batteries.
Patch hole in the bed.
Oh yeah.
This thing
Yeah.
did have a stack on it, so
It had
that
a
thing's
stack.
got to go bye-bye.
Yeah.
Um,
So we're gonna make a cool little piece of metal that fills that in, and not gonna be concourse restored, but it'll be good.
Next, we've got amp steps on this thing, and I believe they're already hardwired in.
Yes. This is somewhat of an older list.
Yeah, so we made this list right after we got the truck, and then before we started filming, Jesse was kind of tinkering with stuff, as he tends to do.
Yeah.
It's good for that, and lots of other things. And we were thinking that the steps were not hardwired in; they were into the OBD2 port, but actually they are hardwired in.
The problem we're having right now is that there's a bunch of stuff stacked on the OBD2 port, and it's busted loose from the dash. So there's all kinds of splitters and stuff going on. So we are going to end up hardwiring some things if we can to get rid of that mess and put a different style splitter in, so it's not all just hanging down where you kick it every time you want to step on the brakes.
Yeah, because if you're familiar with the third gen, you know the OBD2 port is conveniently located like right between the gas and the brake.
Yeah.
So if you've got three things stacked up on there, every time you get in, wham!
OBD2 port.
Next, we check all fluids, replace all fluids. I'm
Yeah.
probably going to say we're probably just going to be replacing all fluids. We have
Yeah.
no idea when they were changed. It's probably one of the single best preventive maintenance things you can do when you first get a truck. That way you know when they're done.
And especially since after it left hands of the business here, saw the mud box.
Exactly.
And it was buried pretty deep, which is evident by the amount of mud that is still in the truck. So
Yeah.
generally after something like that, if you're a mud bogger, you should go home and pressure wash your truck off and drain your diffs and refill everything. But who knows if that actually happened.
And the next one, we have this on there, but this is one of those things we have to, so to give you a little, this truck was built, I don't want to say before we knew how to use computers. We weren't keeping track of things the way we keep track of things now. We're almost positive it has 513s. It's definitely got some sort of aggressive gear in there for sure, because it torches 42s very easily. But we need to verify that it has 513s and that the front has 513s.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things we got to double check on there. Next thing on there, the truck has been sitting for a while. AC is not quite working as well as it should be.
Yeah.
So Jason's going to get his AC hat on.
Yeah.
We're going to go through and diag that and try and figure out what needs to happen. Next, intake manifold.
Yeah.
We have from the COVID Cummins, which is being renamed. I'm not sure if the video, this is going to come out before that one does, but we have an old intake manifold on there that it's one of my favorite things, budgeting and reusing parts.
Yes.
Like when you have good parts, I don't like throwing good parts away for this very reason. The intake manifold on here is a little bit rusty crusty, maybe cracked, we don't know, but we know we have a known good working intake manifold we're going to throw on here.
Yeah. And it's bright and shiny red. 'Cause it's
Exactly.
fake.
And the last thing we're going to put on here, and it's part of what Jesse was talking about, is this thing needs a good, thorough washing. I gave it a wash last week, but this thing needs love on the
Yeah.
underside. Like we may park it and put 2 sprinklers underneath it for the day and just let it do its thing.
Yeah, the underside of the truck is gross. It's had undercoating and spray paint and everything shot over it trying to hide some rusty sins. And so we're going to do a lot of cleaning underneath. It's probably not going to get to the level of show truck that the Silver 07 is, because that thing was a cream puff to start out with.
Yeah.
So as far as cleaning and painting everything on that truck, it was easy. This one's led a little harder life. It's a little rustier. It's a little crustier. So we're going to get as good as we can.
And that is our list for the time being. It will grow, I guarantee it. But that's what we're working on right now. And we're gonna start chipping away at these. I'm not sure what we're gonna get done this week. Part of the reason we're changing the format we do these videos is we just want to take you guys along for the journey as far as getting this stuff done rather than the journey being the video.
Yeah.
The video is the journey. I don't know, I may have said that backwards. I don't know, you know what I'm talking about though.
What Ben's trying to say is we want to give as much content to you guys on this truck as we go through it, because it's not going to be a, oh man, we got to get this truck done this week or we're going to lose the shop kind of like TV show thing. It's this thing's here, we're going to work on it, but it's also a working shop. We got a lot of stuff going on, so it's going to be a slower process, but we're still going to try and make good progress on it every week so we can show you guys the process of what it takes to get a big lifted truck that's been used and abused back to a big lifted show rig that can go tow a trailer and go womp through the mud or the dunes or whatever you want it to do.
Well, nothing left to do but get to it, so
So the first thing we're going to do is kind of kill two birds with one stone. We're going to pull a wheel off, check for wheel fitment on our new 20-inch wheels. We're also going to check for play in the ball joints and the wheel bearings. And we're also going to pull the diff cover off, drain the fluid, and see if we have an air locker in there still. That's not good. That's all water dripping out right there. The first thing we noticed as the cover started to come loose is that there was water dripping out. Now it wasn't full. It had, you know, a little bit, just enough to be, well, it's a good idea that we're changing it. The fluid's a little dirty, but looks like it had some synthetic oil in it still. So yeah, we'll get the cover pulled off and see what we're working with. No big hunks of junk. And no locker. Which means at some point it probably got grenaded and just replaced with a stock carrier. Which isn't a bad thing. This means we can put shiny new parts in it.
yeah.
And get rid of this lame stuff.
How about gear ratio? Anybody tell that?
Yeah, so we can count the teeth on everything by marking them and spinning them around, and we'll be able to figure that out. So I'm going to go grab a rag and a Sharpie. All right, so we got one tooth marked on our pinion gear in the back. We're going to count that first. So,
Oh, so you get that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 teeth. 1, 2, 3. $41. Quick, Ben, can you do math? I'll get my phone, it's quicker. 41 and 8, so 5 13s.
Bam. Still got 513s in the front. Fantastic.
Awesome. That's what we thought it had, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, good. We assume that they put the right gears in the front when they replaced everything. Hopefully they did. I think we've had it in four-wheel drive and it didn't clank and boom, so it should all be good. And other than some dirty fluid, everything else looks pretty good. Nothing's all chipped and broken, no big chunks of metal fell out of the front. I call that a win. So all we're going to do is clean the cover up, get a new gasket, slam it back together, throw some new synthetic gear lube in it, and move on to the next part. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and check our ball joints and do some wheel fitment.
All right, one of the things you may notice on here is that the sway bar looks nice and fresh. That's because it is. When it came in, or when we bought it back, it had no sway bar on it, which I don't know if you've ever driven a lifted truck on 42s with no front sway bar, but
It's not good.
it's a handful.
Yeah.
So we threw a Carly torsion sway bar on there, and that cured pretty much all of the. We had some worst case itis. We're like, oh, the front end shot. We already bought it. I mean, we were committed to it, but yeah, threw a sway bar on there.
Oddly enough, we had a Carly sway bar that is believed to have came off of this truck, but because we're trying to clean everything up, we had a new one sitting here as well. So we just left the old crusty, rusty one in the bin, threw the new one on.
Yeah. So good news.
So there's a few different ways to immediately see if you have bad ball joints or a bad wheel bearing. That will be tire wear. Now, this thing's had this front tire replaced fairly recently. I say fairly recently because I don't think they make MTRs in 42s anymore. So the tire's old, but this was the last tire to be put on the truck. It's pretty fresh tread. See a whole lot of cupping or anything on it, so it'd lead me to believe that they're in pretty good shape. When you have a big tire like this, it's hard to grab it, manhandle it, and see if there's any play. So I'm going to put a pry bar under it. Not really feeling any play in anything. Not seeing any play in tie rods. So everything appears to be pretty tight. But we're going to go ahead and give a thorough checkout on everything after we disassemble and see what needs to be replaced, rebuilt, cleaned up, and painted. As you can see, somebody spray can bed linered the whole front axle, which is not ideal. So we're going to try and clean that up. But worst case scenario, it's already black. We'll just throw some more black on it. We have a 1.5-inch wheel spacer here, and we don't really want to continue running that. So we're going to remove that, and we measured for our back spacing on what we need for our new wheels, so we can eliminate that, run the same offset wheel front and back, because there's no wheel spacers on the back right now. We think somebody threw these on after we sold it to get the tire and wheel a little bit further out, give it a little better stance in the front, which it did have. So for the purposes of this, we're going to leave this wheel spacer on here. Throw on our 20-inch KMC bead lock, which is like a piece of jewelry. I mean, look at that thing. It's really cool look, gonna give a great stance for the truck. It's also a bead lock, so if we decide to go wheeling, we can air it down, have no worries about losing the bead. And I mean, bead locks look cool. That's why there's so many fake bead lock appearing wheels out there. This looks good. So we're probably going to pull all the rings, have them powder coated black to match the wheels, and then mount up our big shiny tires on our big shiny wheels, get everything on the truck. But that'll be in a couple of weeks probably. So for now, we're going to continue looking at ball joints, wheel bearings, brakes, all that sort of stuff. One thing that any Dodge owner is going to remember from the good old days is that hub unit bearings don't last forever. And especially with our salted roads and all the chemicals they put on the roads for wintertime in our area, they really like to go bad. Throw 42-inch tires into that mix and a lot of horsepower. It's not a good recipe. These ones are tight for now, but that doesn't mean they're not going to go bad in a couple of months or a year or 2 years, whenever. But to prevent that, we're going to go ahead and put a Dynatrac free spin kit on here, which returns it to like an older style conical bearing setup, which is regreasable, replaceable, serviceable. Instead of having to throw away a whole unit bearing, you can repack and retighten everything, and it lasts for a long time, a lot longer than these. These rotors are in decent shape. They're still got a lot of life left. They don't appear to be cracked or warped. There's no ridge on them, so they might have been redone in the last couple of years. The pads are still pretty full, so really, these front brakes appear to be in pretty good shape. When we were driving it and getting on the brakes hard, there wasn't any shuddering through the wheel, which means they're probably not warped. But because we're running big tires, and for drivability's sake, it would be nice to have a little bit more stopping power. So we'll probably be looking into a set of drilled and slotted rotors with a lot better pad. And that'll just make everything better. Driving experience, we gotta tow a trailer, you want more brakes. So we'll look into that in the future. So you can see, like everything else, our Dynatrack ball joints, which usually look like a shiny little piece of jewelry, have been spray painted black with bed liner and covered in grease and everything else. Now, we will end up taking these and you leave them in the truck, I believe, and pull the C-clip out and you can rebuild them while they're still in the truck. There's a bunch of little cool little parts. You get in a little baggie and you pull all this out and you throw it in the trash. And you pull all the little stuff out of the baggie and you kind of file it all in there and slap that ring on there, pump some grease in the top, good to go.
One thing we forgot to add to the list, this will be getting new steering. It currently has the Mopar 09 steering on there. I believe we're doing the Apex steering?
Yep.
Yes. Apex steering it is.
Way more better.
Way more better. Also, still is a T-style steering, but much heavier duty.
And it'll get rid of this tie rod stuff that's all been spray painted with bed liner, which, like I said before, not exactly ideal. And it looks good, you know, like if you're going to the used car lot and you're like, oh man, I gotta trade this truck in real quick. Let's get 20 bucks worth of duplicolor and paint the underside of the truck. But if you're gonna build a nice truck, this is a really poor way of doing it.
Yeah.
All right, take two.
Is this the part where I tell you to use your purse?
There we go. Let me forget to torque that down.
So before we mentioned it has no inner fender liners, this is what we're talking about. All the road grime. Especially door jams. So Jesse's going to get creative and get some inner fender liners built, because this again has fiberglass on the front, so needs something to protect it. So for the time being, we're just getting the front differential cover cleaned up and put back on there. Chances are we're going to be in and out of there a couple more times, so we're not really too worried about replacing the cover at the moment. Or, yeah, we're just going to be reusing the gasket. Yes, we know, I don't want to hear it, but...
Technically, this gasket is reusable. And I say technically because at a certain point they get brittle and old and crack, and you shouldn't reuse them at that point. Now, like Ben said, we're going to be back in here pretty soon. So this gasket is in pretty good shape. It's still pretty supple. So for what we're doing right now, we can kind of live with this. But it will probably be getting a new diff cover along with a gasket as soon as we decide what locker we want to put in the front of this.
What he said. Jesse, you got a pro tip?
Yeah, so after you're done with this, always move your panel oil so that you don't drop bolts in it when you're putting your cover back on. And that's good for just about anything, including doing an oil change. I don't know how many people have dropped a drain plug from their oil pan into a nice vat of hot oil. But sure, it's exfoliating for your skin when you reach in elbow deep, but it's not fun to clean off. So yeah, just don't do it. Just move stuff out of the way when you're done.
What you torquing to those two, Jesse?
They're right about there. Think this is a dealership? I use torque specs for diff covers. Come on. And everybody on there goes, oh, you gotta torque that to spec. It's like a gasket. Yeah. All right. You go take a poll on the street of everybody who's ever changed their diff cover oil or their diff fluid and ask them what they torque their diff. You'll find out most of them are liars.
I think probably one of the most common questions we always get is, what kind of oil should I use? What kind of fluid? Schaefer's everything. Just use Schaefer's. That's all I'm going to say. Let's get this thing filled up.
It's 1839. There wasn't even cars. The Civil War hadn't happened yet, but Schaefer's was there. Another little pro tip. If you're trying to figure out how much fluid is already in there, and you're thinking like, well, does it take 3 quarts? Does it take 2 quarts? Does it take 2.5 quarts? Thinking, oh, how much is in there right now? Always take a zip tie. You just bend it over, give it a good little crease there, and you can dab that down in there. Like so. You can see that it's almost full. So I'm gonna go find a partial out of the cabinet there, full one back on the shelf.
We all know that feeling. Do I crack open a whole new one? Do I find a little bit extra? When you're me and it's like 10:30 at night and you have to be at work the next morning, you gotta fill up your diff. Do I make an emergency run somewhere to get more lube, or am I like just barely enough? That's where the zip tie trick comes in handy.
Don't over tighten that plug. Don't do it. You heard it here first, folks.
we made a list, so we might as well start checking stuff off.
13. Yeah.
Reconfirmed front axle has 513s, and there is no front locker.
Yep. We got one fluid replaced. Go us. Look at us go.
Look at that, making a list. I'm not gonna lie, checking things off of a list feels good.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta give yourself a quick little W, but the check mark, feels so good.